Most people think building wealth requires something dramatic, a big investment, a successful side hustle, or some kind of financial breakthrough. But the truth is much less exciting. The habits that actually build wealth are usually boring. They don't look impressive. They won't make you feel rich overnight. And they definitely won't impress anyone on social media. But quietly, over time, these small habits can save tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even hundreds of thousands. The strange part is that most people already know about many of these habits. They just don't follow them. Not because they are difficult, but because they are too simple and too boring. In this video, we're going to look at 10 boring habits that quietly save people thousands of dollars. None of them are exciting, but all of them work. If you look at social media, it often feels like everyone is getting rich in exciting ways. People talk about crypto wins, viral side hustles, flipping businesses, or making huge investment returns. The message is always the same. Wealth comes from doing something big and impressive. But when researchers actually study how most people build wealth, the story looks very different. Large studies of millionaires consistently show that the majority of them didn't become wealthy through dramatic breakthroughs. They didn't discover some secret investment. They didn't win the financial lottery. Instead, they built wealth through consistent, predictable habits repeated for years. Habits that most people would find extremely ordinary. Driving practical cars instead of impressive ones. Cooking simple meals instead of constantly eating out. Keeping the same lifestyle even when income increases. None of these behaviors are exciting, but the math behind them is powerful. Because money doesn't usually disappear through one big mistake. It disappears through dozens of small spending decisions made every single week. But if someone practices them consistently, the long-term difference can be enormous. Let's start with the first habit. Habit number 1. Create a waiting rule before buying things. One of the most expensive habits in modern life is instant buying. A product appears on your screen. You feel a small spark of interest, and within seconds, the purchase is done. Online shopping has made spending money almost effortless. A few taps on your phone, and the product is already on its way to your house. No time to reconsider. No pause to think. Just instant spending. But people who are careful with money often use a very simple rule. They wait before buying. Sometimes it's a 24-hour rule for small purchases. Sometimes it's a 7-day rule for larger ones. The idea is simple. Instead of buying something the moment you want it, you give yourself time, because something interesting happens when you do this. Many things that feel important in the moment suddenly feel unnecessary a day or two later. The excitement fades, the urgency disappears, and you realize you didn't actually need the item. This small pause prevents hundreds of impulse purchases every year. A $30 purchase here, a $50 purchase there, a gadget that seemed useful but ends up sitting in a drawer. None of these purchases feel significant by themselves, but when they happen repeatedly, they quietly drain thousands of dollars over time. A simple waiting rule adds friction back into the buying process, and sometimes that small pause is all it takes to keep money in your pocket. Habit number 2. Stop constantly reinventing what you eat. For many people, food has become one of the biggest areas of unpredictable spending. Every week feels different. Different groceries, different recipes, different restaurants, different delivery apps. At first glance, this seems normal. Food is part of daily life, and variety feels enjoyable. But this constant change creates two expensive problems. First, grocery spending becomes unpredictable. When every week involves new ingredients and new recipes, it becomes very difficult to know exactly how much food will cost. Items get bought for a specific meal and then sit in the refrigerator until they spoil. Food waste increases dramatically. Many households buy groceries with good intentions. Fresh vegetables, extra ingredients for recipes, leftovers that might be eaten later. But when meals constantly change, much of that food eventually ends up in the trash. A surprisingly effective solution is something many frugal households quietly practice. They repeat the same simple meals. Instead of planning completely new meals every week, they rotate through 4 or 5 reliable dishes. Meals they already know how to cook. Meals with ingredients they understand well. Meals that can be prepared quickly. This repetition creates several advantages. Grocery shopping becomes easier because you already know what to buy. Cooking becomes faster because you've made these meals many times before. And most importantly, food waste drops dramatically. You know exactly how much of each ingredient gets used. Nothing sits forgotten in the refrigerator. At first, this idea sounds boring, and in some ways, it is. But boring systems often create the most predictable financial results. A small rotation of reliable meals can reduce grocery spending significantly over time, not through extreme dieting, not through strict budgeting, just through simple consistency. Habit number 3, use what you already have before buying more. This sounds almost too obvious to mention, but in reality, many households slowly accumulate things they never fully use. Food in the refrigerator, half-used products and items in closets that were bought for a specific purpose and then forgotten. Modern shopping makes it incredibly easy to keep adding new things without finishing the old ones. You go to the store for a few groceries and come back with more ingredients than you planned. You order a new product online while a similar one still sits unused at home. You buy replacements long before the original item is truly finished. Over time, this pattern creates quiet waste. Food spoils, products expire, clothes sit unworn, and small purchases keep repeating again and again. A surprisingly effective habit is to pause before restocking anything. Before buying more groceries, look inside the refrigerator and freezer first. Before ordering something online, check whether you already own something similar. Before replacing an item, ask whether the current one still works. Many people discover they already have enough ingredients for several meals, enough household products for another month, enough clothes for the entire season. This habit doesn't feel like saving money. It simply feels like paying attention. But paying attention changes behavior, because once you become aware of how much unused stuff already exists in your home, buying more becomes less automatic. Instead of constantly adding new things, you begin to cycle through what you already have. And over time, that simple shift reduces spending in dozens of small ways, not through restriction, but through awareness. Habit number 4, make your everyday drinks at home. Small daily purchases often feel harmless. A coffee on the way to work, a cold drink during the afternoon, a quick stop at a cafe while running errands. Each purchase might only cost $5 or $6. It doesn't feel like a financial decision. It feels like a small comfort in the middle of a busy day. But daily habits have a way of multiplying quietly over time. A $6 coffee, purchased 5 days a week, becomes about $30 per week. Over a month, that's roughly $120. Over a year, that habit can reach $1,500 or more. And coffee is only one example. Energy drinks, bottled juices, smoothies, and convenience store snacks follow the same pattern. Individually, they feel insignificant, but together, they form a constant stream of small spending. People who are careful with money often approach these purchases differently. They don't eliminate them completely. Instead, they shift the routine. They make most drinks at home. Coffee from a simple machine in the kitchen. Cold drinks prepared before leaving the house. Reusable bottles filled before the day begins. This small change dramatically lowers the cost. A cup of coffee made at home often costs less than $1, sometimes much less. And once the routine becomes automatic, the convenience difference becomes surprisingly small. The cafe visits don't disappear entirely. They simply become occasional experiences instead of daily habits. And that small adjustment alone can quietly save thousands of dollars over the years. Not through sacrifice, but through a simple shift in routine. Habit number 5, bring your own food more often. For many people, buying food outside the home has become a normal part of daily life. Lunch during workdays, quick meals between errands, snacks while traveling, convenience food when schedules feel busy. None of these purchases feel like major expenses on their own. A lunch here, a snack there, maybe a quick meal during a busy afternoon. But when this becomes a daily pattern, the numbers grow quickly. Buying lunch during a typical workday might cost anywhere from $10 to $15 in many cities. Multiply that by 5 days a week, and it becomes $50 to $75. Over a month, that can easily reach $300. Over a year, it can approach $3,000 to $4,000. Preparing food at home changes the math dramatically. A simple meal made at home often costs only a few dollars. Even well-prepared meals with good ingredients are usually far cheaper than restaurant prices. The difference between these two habits might not feel dramatic on any single day, but over time, the gap becomes surprisingly large. People who bring their own meals more often also gain another advantage. They control the portions and ingredients. They waste less food, and they reduce the number of small, unplanned purchases that often happen when eating out. This doesn't mean avoiding restaurants completely. Restaurants can be enjoyable experiences, but when outside food becomes the default option for every meal, spending quietly increases. Packing food from home might not look impressive. It doesn't feel luxurious, but it is one of the simplest habits that can quietly protect your money. Habit number 6, make spending slightly inconvenient again. Modern shopping has removed almost every obstacle between people and their money. You don't need to drive anywhere. You don't need to carry cash. You don't even need to stand up. A few taps on your phone, and the purchase is complete. Payment information is saved. Addresses are remembered. Recommendations appear instantly. Everything is designed to make buying as easy as possible. And that convenience is exactly why spending has become so effortless. Because when buying something requires almost no effort, the brain has very little time to reconsider. The decision happens quickly, often in seconds. People who are careful with money often create small barriers between themselves and impulse purchases. Nothing extreme, just a little friction. For example, some people remove shopping apps from their phones. Others delete their saved payment information from websites. Some create a simple rule that Non-essential purchases must be made from a computer rather than a phone. These small barriers slow the process down. Instead of buying something instantly, you have to pause. You have to log in again. You have to type in payment details. And during that pause, something interesting often happens. The urgency disappears. The item feels less necessary, and the purchase quietly never happens. This habit doesn't stop every purchase, but it prevents many impulsive ones. And since impulse spending is responsible for a large percentage of everyday purchases, even small barriers can significantly reduce how often it happens. Sometimes protecting your money isn't about discipline. It's simply about slowing things down. Habit number 7. Stop treating clothes like disposable items. Clothing used to be something people purchased carefully and kept for years. Today, it often feels very different. New trends appear constantly. Online stores release new collections almost every week. Social media creates the impression that outfits should always be new. And slowly, buying clothes becomes a regular habit instead of an occasional need. Many people purchase clothing not because they truly need it, but because something new simply looks appealing in the moment. A shirt on sale, a jacket that looks interesting online, shoes that feel like a small upgrade. Each purchase feels harmless on its own, but clothing spending tends to repeat frequently. A few small purchases each month, another item during seasonal sales, another purchase because something looked good online. Over time, closets fill up with clothes that were worn only a few times. Some items are forgotten, others lose their appeal quickly, and the cycle continues. People who are careful with money often take a much simpler approach. They choose a small collection of clothes that work well together. Comfortable items, reliable styles, things that can be worn repeatedly without much thought. Instead of constantly replacing their wardrobe, they wear the same pieces regularly. This might sound boring, and in many ways, it is. But repetition has advantages. It reduces decision fatigue in the morning. It eliminates constant browsing for new clothes, and it prevents the quiet accumulation of items that rarely get used. When clothing purchases become occasional instead of spending drops naturally, not because of strict budgeting, but because the habit of constant buying simply disappears. Habit number 8. Treat saving money like a bill you must pay. Most people follow a very predictable pattern when they receive their paycheck. The money arrives, bills get paid, daily spending happens, and whatever remains at the end of the month might go into savings, if anything remains at all. The problem with this system is that spending naturally expands to fill the money available. Small purchases appear during the week. Unexpected expenses show up. Convenience spending slowly adds up. By the time the month ends, there is often very little left to save. People who consistently build wealth often reverse this order. Instead of saving whatever remains, they save first. The moment their income arrives, a portion of it is immediately moved to savings or investments, before rent, before groceries, before discretionary spending. This creates a powerful psychological shift, because once the money is moved out of the spending account, it stops feeling available. The lifestyle simply adjusts to the remaining amount. Instead of saving only when discipline appears, saving becomes automatic. Many employers already make this process easier through retirement plans or automatic contributions. But even small automatic transfers to savings accounts can create the same effect. The important idea is that saving stops depending on willpower. It becomes part of the system. And systems are much easier to maintain than motivation. Over time, this habit quietly builds a financial cushion, a reserve that grows steadily month after month. Not because of dramatic changes, but because saving became the first priority instead of the last. Habit number 9. Resist upgrading your lifestyle every time your income increases. For many people, a raise at work feels like permission to upgrade life. A slightly nicer apartment, a newer car, more frequent restaurant meals, better gadgets. None of these changes feel extreme on their own. After all, if income increases, it seems reasonable for spending to increase as well. But this pattern has a hidden effect. Expenses slowly grow until they perfectly match the new income level. This phenomenon is often called lifestyle creep, and it's one of the main reasons people earning very good salaries still feel financially stressed. Because even when income rises, the amount left over at the end of the month barely changes. Every increase in income gets absorbed by new expenses. A different approach is surprisingly simple. When income increases, Keep your lifestyle the same for a while. Continue living the way you did before the raise. The extra income can then go towards savings, investments, or paying off debt. This creates a gap between what you earn and what you spend. And that gap is where financial progress happens. Over time, this gap can grow significantly. Someone who receives several raises over a few years but keeps their spending stable can accumulate large savings surprisingly quickly. Eventually, lifestyle improvements can still happen, but they happen slowly and intentionally rather than automatically. This habit often feels uncomfortable at first, especially when people around you are upgrading everything immediately. But the long-term benefit is powerful. Instead of your lifestyle expanding with your income, your financial security expands. Habit number 10. Develop a hobby that can eventually produce income. Most hobbies cost money. People spend on equipment, memberships, subscriptions, and entertainment simply to pass time. There's nothing wrong with hobbies. In fact, they are important for relaxation and mental health. But some hobbies have a unique advantage. They can slowly evolve into something productive. Instead of only consuming time and money, they begin to create value. For example, someone who enjoys photography might eventually start taking photos for small events or selling prints online. Someone interested in fitness might document their progress and share advice online. Someone who enjoys writing might begin freelancing or creating digital content. These activities often start as simple interests, something done for enjoyment during free time. But over time, skills improve. Experience builds, and opportunities sometimes appear. The goal is not necessarily to create a full second career. Even a modest additional income stream can make a noticeable difference. A few $100s per month. Occasional freelance work. Small online sales. When combined with the other habits we discussed, that extra income accelerates financial progress. Savings grow faster. Investments increase. Financial pressure decreases. Perhaps more importantly, productive hobbies replace some forms of passive consumption. Time spent building something often replaces time spent spending money. Instead of entertainment always costing money, some activities begin to generate it. And over the long term, this small shift can change how a person relates to work, income, and financial independence. None of the habits we've discussed are exciting. No one posts on social media about bringing lunch from home. No one brags about wearing the same clothes for years. No one celebrates waiting before buying something they wanted. These habits don't look impressive. They don't feel glamorous, and they certainly don't create the appearance of wealth. But the people who consistently build financial security often live this way, not through dramatic sacrifices, but through small decisions repeated over long periods of time. Because money rarely disappears through one big mistake. It disappears quietly through everyday habits, a purchase made out of convenience, an upgrade that felt harmless, a routine expense that slowly became normal. Each one feels small in isolation, but over months and years, those small decisions shape your financial reality. The same is true in the opposite direction. Small habits that protect your money may not feel powerful at first. Making coffee at home, repeating simple meals, delaying unnecessary purchases, saving automatically before spending. None of these habits will change your life in a single week. But practiced consistently, they slowly create stability, then flexibility, and eventually, freedom. Building wealth is rarely about doing something extraordinary. More often, it's about doing ordinary things consistently while most people don't. And in the long run, boring habits often lead to extraordinary results.